Hello, everyone. Welcome to another segment of relationship advice for women called The Other Woman. We have a special guest, Miss Kylie, sharing her testimony of her experience as the other woman. So, Miss Kylie, please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Kylie Ota, and I'm a leadership coach. I wish I had me when I was going through all the stuff. You know what I mean? Because when I was going through the stuff, I was a very broken woman.
Mm,
I was in a very abusive marriage.
mm,
I was married, he was married, and and he was narcissistic. So, right, that narcissistic abuse and the gaslighting and just the mental breakdown that I was experiencing in that relationship. So, I didn't have the tools that I
mm,
have now, since becoming a coach and like the mindset and all of that. And I'm just so glad that I have that now. And I'm so glad you're doing this podcast now because the women need to see that it is a mind game, right? It's
mm,
definitely a mind game.
mm,
And everything that you get into, it has a consequence, right?
yeah.
Every decision we make, positive or negative, always has a consequence, right?
Mhm.
And so my heart was broken, just going back to that time. And I
When
was
did it
what I
happen?
call, yeah,
When did it happen? What year?
this was in like 2003. So it's
Okay.
been a while.
It's been how long did this last?
Like a couple of years or so.
Okay.
It's we worked together, so it was like, yeah, I can get into it. So he and I were working on a project together, which is super
Mhm,
stressful. And because, we were really intimate in that setting, right, during the project, we
mhm,
got really close and tight.
mhm,
And I wasn't really seeing my husband much because I was at work.
mhm,
And so, I got closer to him. And because I didn't really have a good relationship with my husband at home, and I felt belittled and gaslighted and all of that, like
mhm,
um, like I said, I was a broken woman. And
mhm,
so when I was validated and approved by this other man, I was like, oh,
mhm.
this is so great. I call it love starved. I was love starved.
Mm. Okay.
And I know that because I've spoken to other women about this too, because
Mhm,
I was so ashamed,
mhm,
especially as a Christian woman who knows
mm,
better
mhm.
that like this is not what the Bible says that you're supposed to do. Like
Yeah.
I ignored all of that.
So you were married when
I was
you
married, we
okay.
were married, and like I ignored all of that because my flesh was
Wow.
it like I was like starving. I felt like I was in a desert and I needed water.
Wow.
The analogy that's coming to my mind right now is there's the Star Wars movie where um the guy goes like um he becomes like he was a stormtrooper and then he wasn't a stormtrooper anymore. He wanted to join the rebellion. And there's a scene where there's this nasty looking water bowl. And
Mhm,
he's so thirsty that he goes and he drinks out of that water bowl with
mhm,
that really gross creature. And he's like, I don't care. I'm thirsty. I've been in a desert for so long.
mhm.
Whatever water it is, even if it's nasty, I'll drink it. And so
Wow.
that's the analogy that's come to my mind because a lot of times we don't realize that how broken we are, how thirsty we are for love, and we get into these relationships
Wow.
like not thinking about it, not thinking about the consequences, right? So us who are watching that movie, we're like, "Oh, that's so gross! It's so nasty. Why is he drinking that water? I would never drink that water." And you
Yeah.
never know until you're that thirsty what you
Mhm.
would drink. You know,
Wow. Wow. That's wow. Mm-mm. That's you never know how thirsty, like if you're that thirsty, what you would drink. And so this is so interesting because another woman, I mean, she was a Christian woman too, and she ended up in the same situation because of that love starving, being love starved. And I, even as a Christian woman, you know how the Bible says that we are not supposed to um withhold sexual intimacy from our spouse so that we won't be tempted. And so a lot of that is geared toward men. Make sure you don't
Yes.
not you give your husband sex when he wanted. But what about when the woman, because this is also talking about when your wife wants that affection and you're not
Right.
giving it to her. So there is, and I'm not blaming, however, the Bible says we have a responsibility. We
Yes.
have a responsibility to make sure we help our spouses not be tempted.
Yes.
And so, even this other woman who her testimony is powerful, powerful. And I want you to be able to watch that. But hers happened at work too, a
Mhm.
situation. And so
Yeah.
I want you to just tell me, before this exactly happened, what were the things that you were telling your husband, that you were crying out to him? Like, what were you sharing with him? And are you still married to him?
No. So I've been happily married now to my husband for, what is it? It's been together for 12, married for 11. So there
Okay.
were like 8 years in between, like when we got divorced and then I met my husband now.
Okay.
So
So you can tell me about the previous one. What were the things that you were telling him when you were feeling starved?
honestly, I was not,
Mm.
because and I think everyone's situation is different, and the nature of narcissistic abuse makes it different. Because so here's what I was doing. I was reading the book Love and Respect by Emerson Eggerichs,
Yeah.
right? It talks about the love and respect balance for women. And so I thought I was doing something wrong for my husband at the time to treat me the way that he did. I thought that, okay, I need to fix this. And if we do these things, then and God will fix our marriage, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, even the sex part, like, we were having sex regularly. It wasn't that we weren't having sex, but when it comes to women versus men and our
Mm-hmm.
needs,
Mm-hmm.
right? We have different needs.
Right.
And so my affection was starved, you
Right.
know, and
Mm-hmm.
his sexual needs are being taken care of, like the Bible says. But for women, right,
Mm-hmm.
we need that foreplay, we need that affection, we need that love, because, right, I don't know if it's for every woman, but like just having sex,
Mm-hmm.
it's like
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
it it does something, and it did something to me, because here's another piece of the puzzle. Like, as I was talking to other women about it, I had a couple of Me Too incidents when I was younger. So I was
Mm-hmm.
violated when I was
Okay.
younger. And so, going into like a all sex, no affection
Mhm.
relationship with my husband, it really brought back some of those feelings, memories. And I realized I had cut myself off emotionally from him because there was none of that affection and love and
Mhm.
whatever. And so compounded with being talked down to, and all those other things, it just was like, okay, this is, and biblically speaking, right? I have to do my woman duty
Mhm.
to my husband. Okay, so yes, the Bible says I need to have sex with my husband or he's gonna go elsewhere. So I did.
Yeah.
But it was really messing me up on the inside, because I'm like, but what about me?
Right.
What about me? What about my needs?
Yeah.
And also at the time, I had a friend who was not a Christian, and
Mhm.
she was also involved in an extramarital affair as well. So she was single, but the guy that she was seeing was married, and they've been on and off for years. And so
Yeah.
I felt like I couldn't turn to my life group for what I was struggling through, you
Yeah.
know. So I turned to her because I knew she went through or was currently going through something similar. And when I mentioned it to her, she's like, girl, do you. You know, if you need it, go get it. And so
Yeah.
again, it just ended up being the slippery slope. And you know, I felt like that for me, that was like the last straw, because I got permission to do it
Yeah.
from my friend. She was like, it's normal. You have needs. Like, everybody has needs. And if he's giving it to you, why should you stop yourself? And I was like, yay, validation for my
Yeah.
sin. Okay, I can go ahead and do it. And
Okay.
man, and so once, like, there was this attraction building, you know, and then once I got that external validation to like, do you, I was like, oh, cool, she's doing it too. It's kind of like drugs, right? Oh, my friends are doing it.
Yeah. So how
No
did
one
he
didn't
approach
do
you?
it.
I mean, I want to know the story. How did he approach you?
Well, it was actually me.
Okay.
It was me, because I was looking for attention. I was looking for validation. And I mean, I could see that there was some attraction there, but right, he knew I was married and things. And so he just thought we were being friendly. And then when it came down to it, I was like, you know, like, no, like, do you want me? And he was like, oh, like, you know, I do. And then we ended up, you know, fooling around and stuff. And
he was married as well.
Yeah. So here's the kicker. My husband at the time ended up walking in on us making out. And so that, yeah. And so
When
we
did
all
this happen? How did that lead? Because it's a part missing
so
out.
we all work together.
Okay, so your husband worked. Wow. Okay, so your husband worked.
Yeah,
Okay, you ain't got to tell me where you worked.
We were on different schedules. So I was on the night track, he was on the day track, because we had like, my daughter was about 2 at the time. So it's like, somebody has to be home with the kids and whatever. And like at that particular time, she was with her grandparents.
Okay.
The kids were with the grandparents. So I was like, okay, you know, like, so we weren't out drinking after work. And then, so there was alcohol involved, you know, for that first interaction, right?
Okay.
So I'm like, I'm feeling good. He's feeling good. And I was like, do you want to make it happen? And yeah, so he ended up coming over, and I was like, he's working. Like, he's not going to be here.
Was this the first interaction you all had? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so your husband didn't, at the time, your ex-husband, he didn't know that y'all were drinking or went out?
So what I gather, like, after he knew that we all went out drinking. So he had a sinking suspicion. So he asked to come home early that day. They were overstaffed, so he asked to come home early. He's like, do you need me? And they're like, no, it's winding down, you can go home. And so he came home, and then that's when, you know, everything went down. And I was really faced with the reality of everything, because it was like, I felt this power, you know, like the attraction and the power. It's like, oh yes, you know, like the validation, the power, like, and
you were wanted. You felt wanted.
I was wanted. And also, like, the flip side of being violated when I was younger, like, now it was this weird dynamic where I was no longer the victim, but I want to say victor, but you know, I was the one in pursuit.
Like, you're the one who had the power. You didn't feel like you were,
right. Like, I was in control of, you know, and like, okay, I like you, like, this is what I want, and I know you want me, so, you know, let's go.
How did you know he wanted you?
Well, there were signs, you know, like, we're going, like, innuendos, exchanges, and things like that. And I was like, there was this like sexual tension building up, you know. And I was like, like, I'm ready to go all in on this. Like, are you? And he was like, yeah, I am. And so, well, we didn't say it with words per se, but, I invited him over, and I took that as a sign, like, okay, he's willing to come over to the house. That means, yeah,
Yeah.
if he said yes to coming over, then it was yes to a lot of different things. And so really, yeah, I was like, okay.
And so you said this affair lasted how many years?
Um, so what happened after we got caught was,
Y'all got caught immediately, like as soon
yeah,
as you tried something. Okay.
right. And so when we were in that moment, my husband walked in and he was like, what's going on? And I was so afraid because my husband has a very bad temper.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought everything was, like, oh my gosh, like everything's gonna blow up. Nothing happened. All he said was, she's a slut. You want her? You can have her. And he walked out.
Wow.
And I was like, and at that point, I was like, okay, cool. I got the green light. Like,
Well, I was gonna say that's the worst thing you could tell to somebody who's already.
but then I got checked because he didn't say, the other man, right? He didn't say anything. He just sat there and he was like,
Wow.
and I'm like, he just said you can have me. Like, and
Wow.
but he was in shock. I was in shock. And he was like, do you want me to stay or go? I was like, do I have to ask you to stay? I was just like, my
Wow.
head was spinning at this time. And I was like, it's up to you. If you want to stay or go, you can go. And he left.
Oh wow.
And so I took that as a sign that, okay, well, maybe it wasn't meant to be. So and I mean, my husband and I had, we had kids together. So I was like, okay, maybe this is a sign that I need to get back with my husband. I try to make it better. Like, okay, God's sending me a sign, like, girl, like, get off the path, right? So my husband and I tried to work it out for like a year. But every time we went to, finally he agreed to go to therapy, went to therapy. And the whole time it was like, I couldn't bring up any issues because he would bring up issues, like, or if I said something about, like, I can't believe, like, he wanted to buy this ridiculously expensive thing and like drain our bank account. He's like, but you cheated. So it was like,
oh wow. So he keep using that against you.
yes, like every single time I would bring up something in an argument or whatever, he always had that upper hand. I was like, I can't live like this. And so we ended up divorcing not too long after. I mean, the divorce was very long, right? Because he's hurt. He felt mistreated. So he wanted everything in that divorce. So the divorce was just really long and dragged out. And in that time, I needed validation again. So like, we started talking, and it wasn't like I would say it was more, for me, was an emotional affair. Because, he was my crutch during the divorce, like going through the divorce, and like, I would tell him a lot of things that I knew would be private and confidential with my case, because we all worked together, and it blew up at work. Like, everybody found out.
Wow.
Everybody found out, and I was just like the Scarlet Letter woman, like, oh, she did. Oh, did you see what she did? Like, she did it.
But wasn't he cheating on his wife?
Yeah. So that's the weird thing. Like, I was the only one that was thrown under the bus in that whole triangle.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah. So there's that. And then I just felt really alone. And because we had he and I, the other man, had a good friendship before that. And we started talking again. And so I was very emotionally involved. Like, he was the person, like, because I wasn't dating anyone, I wasn't seeing anyone.
Like a companion.
Yeah. And so there were times that, I mean, like we did like occasionally like hook up and meet up and do those things, but those are far and in between because I was on the fence, like, like
Did his
I
wife ever contact you?
no, she knew about it, but
Mm.
she never did contact me. Yeah, because she found out about that initial one because it was going around everywhere. So he told her about that first time, but
Mm.
when we were talking and stuff, still like
Mhm.
she didn't know. And when we would like meet up, it would be like she'd be out of town or something. So it was like really far and in between, but we would still like hook up and meet up here and there. And
Yeah.
so, like to get what you were saying at the beginning, like what if there's like anything, because it's this slippery slope, you know, like you think you're getting into something that's really good because it's, you know, like the analogy that's coming to me is sugar. So
Okay.
right now I'm on the no sugar diet, and
Mhm.
and so um right when we get that bite of sugar, when we get that dopamine hit, it feels good, it tastes good. But for me, because I'm doing no sugar, it gives me migraines when I do like sneak
Okay.
and I get sugar
Oh.
because my body, you know,
Yeah.
um, my body has been used to not living with sugar. So it would be like none of that, and then we hook up, and then I get the hit, and then we separate, and he's like, "Well, you know, I gotta go back." I'm like, "But this was good, whatever, but I gotta go back." I'm like,
Okay, so he was never willing to commit to anything.
"No, no."
Okay, wow.
And that, so eventually, like, it broke my heart, and he's like, "But why do you wanna stop?" Like, and I couldn't just, um, be a friend, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I could not, like, still be friends, and we were, I mean, we all, like, it was a work thing, so I had to be cordial, but I was like, I can't be BFFs with you anymore, I can't, we can't talk, we can't have these type of conversations where I'm pouring out my heart to you because I feel so rejected, so abandoned, like, my
Yeah.
heart is breaking, and, um, yeah, and it was, so this is the part, right, that the listeners really need to hear, is every time like, as good as that was, like the sugar, as good as that hit was, like, now, like, I get major migraines. Like, if I eat something that has sugar in it, and like the next couple of days, I get like these major headaches because of the detox that's happening, right? Like, um, and so I relate that to this. Like every time we would hang out or whatever, start talking, you know, like, um, I was like, no, I cannot do this
Mhm.
because it's breaking my heart. And the one thing that he did bring up was, um, you know, he's like, this is why we can't be together because every time we meet and then we, you know, we go our separate ways, you get so moody and
Mm.
emotional, right? He's like, I want to be with someone who's, he didn't say emotionally stable, but I want to be with someone that I know is not going to be swinging all over the place. And I'm like,
He meant that doesn't care what he does, that he can just use when he wants,
yeah.
like his wife, because you
Hmm.
said she knew.
Hmm.
And is she still with him right now?
I think so. Yeah.
And that's the weird, that is the interesting thing. Most women will stay with somebody who
Right.
continuously does this to them.
Hmm.
Wow. And so I just, you all had these interactions, like how explain sometimes how they work because I'm trying to understand how your interactions work, but a lot of stuff I'm hearing is kind of like general, we hooked up, like I want some detail.
Oh, so that's, I just want to just protect the privacy of like
Uh-huh.
everyone involved. Yeah. So
Okay,
I don't
right.
think I
Well,
can
I'm
like
not
too
talking about
detail
like
on that.
I'm not talking about no what position this was,
Oh,
nothing like that. I'm
yeah.
just
I
like
mean, like,
like what did y'all do together? That's what I mean. Like, what did y'all do? Did y'all go on dates? Like, what made you think that this was actually going to be a thing that that made you keep going back to him?
Yeah, it would be like dates and things and just meeting, like outside of work, just hanging out. Like it wasn't always about like sexual encounters,
Okay.
although we did have some of those, but like I said, for me, it was very much an emotional thing more than a physical thing. Because I think for
Right.
most women, that's what it is, right?
Okay.
We like I needed that affection, attention, and then he would say that he loved me. So that's the thing, right? He would
Okay.
say
He would say
like,
that.
I love you, and he would say, I do want to be with you, but
Right.
you're not like you love me when I'm here, and then when I'm not here, like you hate on me because I have to go back home. I'm like, well, how else do you expect me to feel? So I was in this emotional roller coaster,
Yeah.
and we get that high, like, hey, I miss you, like want to reconnect, and I'm like, nah, because I was working through my emotions, right? Every time we like have that break or hiatus, whatever, it was like, no, I don't want to. I don't want to. And there were so many different ways I was handling it. I was like, okay, no contact, like just avoid you completely. Then I was like, well, like maybe we can be friends again. Like I tried the friendship thing again. So this was over like the course of, a couple of years or so. Like, okay, I feel like my emotions are good in a stable place. We can be friends again. And then we would talk again, and he'd start making eyes or like, hey, don't you miss me? And I'm
Mhm.
like, I do, but I do not miss this emotional roller coaster. He's
Right.
like, no, it doesn't have to be that way. I'm like, are you sure? He's like, but I've never stopped loving you, things like that. I'm like, but you're with someone else, like you're still with her, so how could you still say you love me too?
Yeah.
It was just this weird thing. He's like, I never stopped thinking about you, like I always think about you, like, and
Mm.
so it got me fired up again. You're like, oh, okay, maybe, maybe this time, maybe this time.
Yeah.
And then it was, okay, I gotta go back. I'm like,
Mhm.
what? I was like, no, not this again. And I would get angry and
Wow.
upset and cut him off. And he's like, what happened? I'm like,
Wow.
what do you mean what happened? Like, this is exactly what happens every time.
Wow. So it's like he turned into another person.
So the weird thing is, it was a duality for
Mhm.
him. And I think for men, because their brains have the capacity to compartmentalize, there's a book called Women, like Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti. So men have a very compartmentalized brain. So, right, I think he kept me in one compartment, kept, the wife and the home and everything in another compartment. So for him, it was two separate entities.
Mhm.
But for me, right, with the whole spaghetti thing, if we're talking about intimacy here, like
Yeah.
how many of you are watching, like you're still thinking about the laundry when you're in bed, right? Every part of our lives are like, I wonder how the kids are, like, are
Yeah.
we being quiet enough? Are we going to wake up the kids? Like when he's in that zone,
Yeah.
doing
Right.
like, he's not thinking about anything
Right.
like that, but we
Right.
are.
Yeah.
And so not to give him a break or whatever, but like I said, after I started learning about like how men and women think, and I think that's what led me to getting more into personal development and coaching and stuff, because my mind, I needed to make sense of my mind, like understanding what my triggers were, why was I doing this to myself? Because
Yeah.
I had other friends besides that one who was like, girl, do it. I had other friends that I told about, like, and, it was this thing where um, they were like, you need to get out. Like, he's no good for you. And
Mm.
I'm like, I know, but I feel so alone. I
Mm.
feel so alone.
Wow.
And it was like when I would hit my bottoms, when I was craving.
Mhm.
Like when when I feel strong, I feel powerful, it's a whole different story, right? It's just like going back to the sugar analogy, when you're not hungry, right? You can say no to dessert. Like if you had the best meal at the best steakhouse and that dessert cart comes around, it's like, no, I'm good. I'm good. But like say you haven't eaten and you know you're not supposed to eat dessert because you're on a diet, you eat whatever's there.
Yeah,
You will.
and so as far as you, because I remember you mentioned you were a Christian and you knew that this was wrong. How did that affect your relationship with God?
Oh, it was bad. Not bad, but it was very emotional roller coaster. And I think that's what made it better or worse, because when we would get together and I would feel so guilty, so
Mhm,
ashamed. I'm like, what did I just do? And so I would get all up in my head, and then I think God, he's a very gentle and generous God. He would come visit me and say, it was never condescending when me and God would have these conversations, but it was
mhm,
always like, okay, here we are again. Because I would feel so alone, and sometimes the only person I could talk to was God. Because who would I talk to about this?
yeah,
Like you can't really talk about this because everything's covert, everything's secret.
yeah,
And so I'm like, God, my heart is broken right now. And he's like, I know. And
mm,
he's like, when are you gonna stop this?
mm,
And I was like, but it's so good. And I even, was petitioning him, like, God, can't you just make this happen in real life? Like, why do I have to be the other woman? Why can't this be a real relationship? He's like, this, it doesn't work that way.
mm,
You know, like that's not how you start a relationship. And
mm,
like, so God and I would have these conversations. And I think that is part of that emotional roller coaster that, that the guy was talking about, because I would be so broken. I would go and talk to God, and and he was like, basically, why you're in this hole right now is because of that relationship. I'm
mhm,
like, okay. And he's like, and the only way to get out of this roller coaster, or this pit,
mhm,
because I was at the bottom, is to stop being on that roller coaster with him.
mhm.
And so the next time he would see me, like, hey, like, I'm like, no, I can't. Because I was just so convicted, and because it was few and far in between.
Yeah.
It's not like we were in constant conversation, because I couldn't just pick up the phone and call because he had obligations, right? So
Did
I would
he
just,
have other relationships? Because he had,
oh,
like, this is normal.
yeah, just with the wife. But
Oh,
but it's not like I could call him, because if she's around or whatever, I don't know where he's at, and this was before cell phones too. I
yeah.
think we had cell phones, but you know what I mean? Um, Caller ID and all of that stuff. So it was
Yeah.
very, like, everything was super covert. And yeah, so like I was going through this roller coaster all on my own. And so the next time I'd see him,
Mhm.
I'd be like, hey,
Yeah.
like, still all in the afterglow or whatever. And I'm
Mhm.
like, I'm changed, because I
Yeah.
was doing this while you were out, like
Right.
living your life. I'm battling here.
Right, 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 right. It's like he
And
didn't care, but you cared. You felt guilty all the time. He felt no guilt. He felt no
yeah,
shame. And
yeah.
I
He
know,
he was not a Christian either, so
okay.
we had different principles and different,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And so I know that, our time is running short here, and I just want to, first of all, thank you for, opening up. Hopefully we can do a part two. But what is one thing that you would warn women? It's two questions. Warn women who are in that tempted state, and
Right.
warn women who are already in it, who have fell into temptation. Two questions.
Yeah. So the first one, if you're on the cusp, I always I will always say, don't do it. It's not
Mhm,
worth it. It 100% is not worth it.
mhm,
Like that one hit that you'll get,
Mhm.
I'm the queen of analogies. So it's like taking crystal meth, right? It's like, you shouldn't do
You
it,
are the queen of analogies.
but right, they tell you like not even once because it's
Yeah.
so addictive, right?
Mm.
And I can say like being in an illicit relationship is way more highly addictive than any other relationship because it's
Mhm.
like it's
A
covert.
thrill.
Yeah, it's a thrill. And it's like, smoking weed versus smoking meth. It's like it's like that hit is different, and
Oh.
you might feel a good buzz, like you're in a real relationship, and then but with that hit is a totally different type of hit, and it
Mm.
gets addicting, and it's
Wow.
really hard to get off of that roller coaster. And I use that analogy because I feel like if you've ever experienced a loved one who battles with addiction, that's
Mhm.
literally what I felt like.
Wow.
Like sneaking around, like buying, like taking hits, and trying to hide it from your family
Mm.
or whatever. Trying to hide it from everybody that you're hooked on this drug. Oxytocin, dopamine. Those are very strong chemicals in
Yeah.
the brain, and it's highly addictive. So
Right.
one, just don't do it. Just think of it like crystal
Right.
meth, one and done. Like you'll be hooked. I mean, unless you have a really strong willpower, but like I said, most women who are tempted, we are very vulnerable and weak at that point to even
Yeah.
consider it. So it's like, don't even do it. I mean, I don't know how to say it.
Just
Don't
don't
do
do
it.
it.
But
What
and then
about people who are in it?
I'm gonna use the drug addiction analogy again because I get it. It's a roller coaster, and I I feel like I had to put myself through a rehab process,
Mm.
similar to like AA, right? You have to stop hanging around with the friends who drink. Like I had to stop hanging around with people who made it permissible,
Okay.
you
Yes.
know?
Yeah.
And I had to go cold turkey. Like
Yes.
I had to go cold turkey. Like I
Yeah.
couldn't be friends, I couldn't like talk or whatever, delete the number, just excommunicado, like just go
Yeah.
cold turkey. And it's hard, but like
Yeah.
you are going to detox from this relationship. You're going to go through a detox period, and you have to surround yourself with other strong people.
Yeah.
Like get you a couple of confidants, because I know this is a subject that
Mhm.
like, but you have to get a couple of confidants
Yeah.
that you can, like you have to get a sponsor. Just like
Yeah.
you got to get a sponsor. Like I'm struggling right now. I
Yes.
want to call him. I
Yeah.
want to like, and you have to have that person tell you no,
And you
and
gotta listen and not
and
get mad.
right, and have someone like maybe if you have someone local. Like I know, like now with the internet and social media, we have a lot of friends who are
Yeah.
not local.
Right.
But if you're lonely, right, say, hey, can I call you? Like just like you would do with an AA sponsor, like I'm struggling right now. I want to go to the bar. Like, can you help me? And you need to have some strong people in your corner to tell you that you shouldn't. Because that's what I didn't have.
Right. 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 I agree 100%. This was great. This was great. I appreciate, your openness. Um, obviously, I believe you have been healed, but like I said before, there's always going to be a scar because it's like, and I sense this with everybody. It's now it's a part of your story. A scar is always going to be a part of your story,
Yeah.
and you know, you can't really hide a scar because it
Right.
it, it you know it just shapes your perceptions on relationships. And I know we gotta go, but I thank you so much, Miss Kylie, for
Yeah.
sharing that with us. And what type of coach are you again?
I do leadership coaching, but I did actually write a book about my story. So this was also part of my healing process.
Okay, gotcha.
God was like, people just what you're doing. Like
Yes.
God was like, I need people to hear the struggle. Like
Yes.
stop them before they go down the road of temptation.
Yes.
Let them know that
Mhm.
this is the road. This is the struggle bus that they're going to be on.
Mhm.
So, I mean, so I know like we didn't get into my whole story, but you can go to my website, kylieota.com/author. The book's on Amazon and it's very like low price. Like it's a mission. Like
And you give me the link. I'm gonna attach it to the description. So,
yeah, and it's really it has nothing to do with my coaching business at all, but it
right.
really was this healing journey that God was like, you need to write the book. You need to warn the women about this slippery slope that they
Yes.
could potentially be on. And
Mhm.
and I was like, no, are you crazy?
What are people gonna say?
What are people gonna say?
Yeah,
What
that's
my
what I.
pastor gonna say? What my
What are people
pastor
gonna
gonna
say?
But I tell you, I say all of this to say, like, writing the book was I'm not telling everybody else that you need to write a book,
Yeah.
but getting it out in the open, like, say, I'm not putting makeup on my scar.
Yeah.
My
Right.
scar is here. I'm not proud of my scar, but if my scar
Mhm.
helps you,
Yes. Mm.
then so be
Mm.
it.
Yeah.
And like I had to I'm like, oh, I'm writing a book. My pastor was like, what kind of book? And I was like, well, I mean, luckily I went through a Christian publishing company who was very good at helping me with all of the repercussions and like
Yes.
the emotional backlash of going through my story, you
Yeah.
know?
Because people still judge you,
They
and
do.
even though God looks at you as redeemed, and people don't, and that's okay.
Yeah. But every person that I've opened up to about my story, one, they've told me they struggled with it in the past.
Oh.
Or two, they're like, I'm so proud of you. You're so brave. So that's why I want to relate it back to like
Yes.
AA or like drug addiction. Like when you come out, right? Like say you go to recovery rehab and you come out on the other side
Mhm.
and you can proudly say like, I walked through the fire. And like, not everybody knows that, like you've gone through it, like drug addiction, whatever. But
Yeah.
for the people who are struggling,
Mhm.
right? That's why we have these conversations.
Yes.
This story is not for everybody.
It's not for
This story is for the woman, like you said, who's struggling with temptation right now,
Mhm.
walking on that fence, and
Mhm.
it's like, no. And
Right.
then for the woman who is caught up in it right now, one, I feel you. I know how hard it is, but there's so much more waiting for you on the other side. And so like in my book, I end with how I got with my husband now. We've been married for 11 years. It's
Mhm.
been like we're so perfect. And
That's great.
I talk about how I wrote in the book, I talk about how my life group leaders, they didn't know what was going on with this other fellow, but it was like after all of that happened, um, make a list of everything that I wanted in a man. And I was like, okay, so I arbitrarily wrote the list.
Mhm.
My husband now is 30 out of 32 things on that list.
Wow. Praise God.
Because I was like, I want someone who's a masseuse and can cook. And he's like, I don't cook, I don't massage, but I will buy you whatever food you want, and
Oh.
then I will pay for massages. And he
Oh.
does. He
Oh.
does.
That's great.
So, you know,
Yes, but thank you so much, Miss Kylie. And I know we gotta go, but we will speak again.
yeah,
Thank you, everybody, so much for watching. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching. Remember, the Other Woman segment will be released every other Thursday at 8:45 p.m. So just make sure you tune in for next week, Conversations with Grace, and the week after for the next episode of The Other Woman. Until next time, bye.